Welcome back. What a day we have already had so far. So let me just hand over the scene to Matthias to tell us what is our next topic.
Thank you, Janne. So we will be in English because our speakers today will most speak in English. So I hope this is fine for you. So digitization has clearly accelerated during the pandemic. We are still at the beginning of the development. Smart solutions that bring clear benefits are really sought after, and digitization is always measured by its value add. So solutions are good, but I think we need impact and we need clear solutions that really provide value to the customer. So I'm really interested to see what we have. And again, Juliana, if you want to introduce our speakers, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Let me introduce our co-moderator for today's digitalization session, Ms. Julia Alt. Welcome. Julia is Global Digital Real Estate Leader at PwC. She co-founded the Austrian Proptech Initiative, co-initiated the European Proptech Initiative, and co-founded the International Future Proptech Event platform. Furthermore, she supported several PropTech startups in their development, and her field of expertise encompasses profound venture capital experiences, identifying investors, facilitating strategic collaborations, securing lighthouse customers, and preparing international expansion and launching new products. So Julia knows exactly what PropTech and all the digital world is all about. So we're very delighted to have you. Thank you so much for being here. And you will be our co-host and be welcoming your guests later on. But first of all, we need to hear from you. What is your oversight on the actual current situation?
Thank you very much, Juliana. Here's Julia from Vienna. And first of all, thank you very much, Matthias, for including me in today's event and giving me the trust to curate the PropTech agenda with you this afternoon. Well, in case you still think that social media is a waste of time, you can really meet some nice people. That's the way how I met Michael Leubel via LinkedIn. So you should use it and check it out. Well, and Colliers has a tremendous growth story behind them, and Matthias understands the importance of digital real estate very well. That's why he just hired a Chief Technology Officer, Christian Reitz, for Colliers Germany. So stay tuned about Colliers Germany's adventures in PropTech. My favorite quote is, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." Today, we will provide you with an overview of the ecosystem and the three main stakeholders. First of all, the corporate real estate companies. As a global digital real estate leader at PwC, I support the largest real estate companies in regard to the digital real estate activities. For example, for pension funds, I did the due diligence of funds. They invested over 100 million in venture capital funds dedicated to PropTech. Or for family office, I do research papers or direct investments. Or for another corporate, I set up a whole corporate venture capital arm just to invest in PropTech. The second pillar are investors. My background is a decade in finance, and I started my career at a hedge fund on Wall Street, co-founded a VC in Central Eastern Europe, and then worked for a private equity firm. Since over 4 years, I'm supporting Mataport, the largest VC in early stage investment. I also got them the first investor outside of the US, which is Signa Innovation, that you probably all know. Furthermore, since 1.5 years, I am supporting Fifth Wall to launch the European fund, and I also got them some family office LPs as an investor. The third pillar are the startup. Well, me, myself, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I co-founded Future PropTech, the largest event company with events in Berlin, Vienna, in London. We had over 205,000 participants, and I sold it in 2019 to Series Tech. I further co-founded Future Plate. It's the largest event company in Asia Pacific with an office in Sydney, Tokyo, and Singapore. And also the Austrian PropTech Initiative, we have about 90 members. I'm in the advisory board of several event companies. For example, Build World, you probably know it all from Expo Real, where I have the pleasure, well, all the pain, to listen to up to 52 pitches in 2 days. I'm sure you all have seen the PropTech map or the construction tech map. Furthermore, I'm in the advisory board of MIPIM globally, Propelled by MIPIM. I'm sure you have heard about it, or CIE-Tech, the largest event companies in America. Besides this, I'm also advising a couple of PropTech companies. One of them is Basking. It's also out of the Colliers Techstar Accelerator in Toronto. It's an ROI-driven workplace analytic platform empowering real estate teams to make data-based decisions, especially now important in times of COVID if you want to check your occupancy in the office. Secondly, it's Space OS. It's the operating system for safe, flexible, and human-centric workplaces. They have clients like Immobilienbranche or Commerz Real in Germany. Work Club give remote working professionals the power to work from anywhere. Since we all know it's not going to be just going back to the office. And it's also not just going to work at home. It's also the place in between. My favorite topics are definitely sustainability. Buildings and their construction account for 39% of global carbon dioxide emissions annually, and we must act now together. Secondly, it's well-being inside and outside of buildings, and physically and mentally. It's not really easy being also a mom of 2 teenage boys who are eating 24/7 or at home. And diversity and inclusion. First of all, I'm half Afghan and I'm a female in a leading position and also dealing with dyslexia. I'm also teaching at real estate MBA students about this topic of diversity, for example, at Columbia University, since it's really dear to my heart. And now I just would like to show you a couple of slides again about the ecosystem. Could we start with the first one? What exactly is Proptech? The Proptech definition we took from our ICS is property technology. Proptech refers to all aspects of innovation and how it impacts the real estate environment. Please to the next slide. It is very important to understand that Proptech is covering all asset classes, the leisure, the office, the storage, the retail. And actually, we in Proptech, we say that everything is Proptech, also your parking lot. And it also through the whole life cycle of the real estate. It's from analysis and financing to space identification and listings, site selection, negotiation, due diligence, development, construction, process automation, spaces, future management, payment and services. And across the globe, there's several Proptech hubs. In Germany, there's the German Proptech Initiative. In UK, there's the UK Proptech Initiative, or in Austria, the Austrian. This is a great starting point to touch base with the ecosystem in your country. I highly can recommend it. Next slide, please. Well, the question is why? Why do you need to know about Proptech? Well, as a corporate, there's several reasons. One of them, of course, is always survival, from Darwin's survival of the fittest. Most important point is for several corporates is to boost efficiency or secure key talent. For example, when I started at PwC, I was really intrigued by the idea to develop this whole digital real estate capacity at PwC. We have 5,000 people in real estate, but we had none in digital. And now 3.5 years later, we have about 100. Next fourth is increased innovation or data insight. Well, when I hear about data insight, I always got a smile because let's be honest, the majority of data is still not digital. It's still in files somewhere, in the closet. And understanding the stakeholders, this is more and more important, especially now in times of COVID. This is why we have tools like tenant engagement, where you communicate with all your different stakeholders or identify and implement opportunities. And what I think is one of the most exciting is really new commercial models. Like, for example, when you have a tenant engagement app, you also have a new income stream. For example, when the employees of the building are buying food or drinks, you get a percentage out of this. So it's a new income source. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, I see the ecosystem in 3 categories. One of them is the real estate corporates and the different stages of how you would like to engage with the startups. The first one is the sponsor accelerate, like you do sponsoring of an event, like today's the digital event, or you are part of an accelerator, like Colliers is part of the Techstar accelerator. They have the Colliers Techstar accelerator. And also another thing is that you recruit someone, just like, Matthias Leube did from Colliers Germany, that he recruited a CTO. A good example is also Oxford Properties in Boston. They have currently 15 people working in digital real estate, and they're going to increase this to 50 just within 2 years. The next thing is a strategic partnership. Also, Colliers is working very closely with a couple of Proptech tools and a lot of others too, like Blackstone, Heinz, RXR, or also we at PwC. Outsource VC, it's like that Heinz and Lena, they're both investors, LPs in Fifth Wall, where you listen later to a presentation from them. Or like Altus Properties, Altus Group, who's also an investor in Mataport, the venture capital that I mentioned before. Or you do direct investment, but in order to do direct investment, you really need a team and all the in-house knowledge. What you really can see lately, it's a huge trend, and we're just again at the beginning of the trend, it's M&A. For example, Autodesk, they just acquired Spacemaker for 240 million. Spacemaker is a tool out of Oslo, which does the BIM modeling. And I think that you will see more and more M&A activities in the coming years because nobody needs 9,000 Proptech tools. And it's not like the winner takes it all. There's space a lot for them, but you got to start. Please, the next slide. And the second category are the investors. To show you just or to speak about the whole spectrum about investors, we all start with the FFF. You might have heard about it. It's the friends, the family, and the fools. Those are the people that you mostly get the first money when you start a company. I've experienced with it myself, asking my parents or friends for money when I started a company. The second one are mostly business angels. Those are very important, not just because of the money that you might get from them, but their experience. There's a lot of serial entrepreneurs who also later on invest. And thirdly, there are family offices. More and more family offices now attracted to this category, like Momeni in Hamburg, who also invested in Fifth Wall, or Pontus in Finland. I just did a research there about 250 family offices throughout Europe who have a huge amount of real estate, and they're now really interested in investing in this category. The next one are the accelerators, as I mentioned before, the Colliers and Techstar accelerator, or Mataport has an accelerator with Columbia University. The next one are the venture capital funds, like we will hear later on from the Fifth Wall, or the Mataport that I mentioned before, or strategic investments. Next one, please. Next slide, thank you. Well, as you can see, you just see the small little logos. It just shows you only the map of the Proptech landscape in Germany. And trust me, it's changing on a daily basis. So you really see it's kind of, it's vivid, you need to start. And if you really doubt if Proptech is here, just hear about some of the tickets that they raised. For example, the online brokerage McMakler raised 57 million in 2019. The crowdfunding platform Explorer raised 49 million. So you really see the ticket size are high. The aim of every Proptech or startup company, of course, is to become a unicorn, to have a valuation over $1 billion. And I can't wait to have a couple of unicorns also based in Germany, since I'm born and raised in Hamburg. So of course, I want to see this, not just the US, the WeWork, the Airbnbs, and some others. And please, this is the presentation. And now I'm going to hand over to Matthias.
Thank you, Julia. This was an extremely good overview, I think, for our participants, and got them to understand, how vast and how diverse the PropTech world really looks like. So I'm really happy that we got the next speaker on, Rolf Oppermann, Managing Director from Fifth Wall. Fifth Wall is clearly the biggest venture capitalist in the world in PropTech. So he will give us his perspective on European PropTech. Rolf, the floor is yours. We are really interested to hear on your perspective. Thank you.
Great, nice to see everyone, and really appreciate Colliers having me and inviting me. I'm going to be sharing a slide deck, so just want to make sure everyone sees it. Give me 1 second. Can people see the screen? Can people see the?
Yes.
Not just yet. Will be just
Got
a
it.
second.
I think it's about the digital cables across the Atlantic, probably.
No. We've got it sorted in a second. It just goes to show how important digitalization is. Right. So while in the background, our team is conferring with Roloff to set it all up so we can see what he is doing. Matthias, maybe one statement from your end. Why is venture capital, in your experience, so important to give the boost to companies to actually, start producing and become market forces?
I mean, and I've talked to many Proptechs, and clearly this starts with an idea. And as Julia rightly said, it starts with the FFF, really, and in terms of you need to get your initial money together, but then clearly, if you have reached a certain state, you really need to bring someone in like Fifth Wall, and clearly having Fifth Wall in as your venture capitalist really shows you also that you have been vetted extremely well, and that there's a high chance for you that you have an idea or created something which might have an impact going forward in the PropTech world, really, yeah.
Right, and is there, in your experience, a difference between how American markets work on venture capital sides in comparison to the European market? Because there is somewhat of a cultural difference, isn't there? Because technology is so new. It might be hard for investors to, go all in and say, right, I'm doing this, I'm putting so much money into something that I might not even fathom what it will do to the business world.
Well, I think venture capital companies have a history to come out of the US, but I think there's a lot of demand for this kind of investment opportunity. So I'm hearing from our people that I think we have done the technical element. So
brilliant.
We switched to Roloff. Yeah.
Stage is yours.
Stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Sorry about the technical delay, but again, the importance of digital. So it's nice to see everyone. It's nice to meet everyone. I'm Roloff Opperman. I'm a partner and the head of our European office and European fund here at Fifth Wall. Just a little bit about us. We're the largest venture capital firm in the world. We have several funds, something like 1.4 billion under management. And unique thing about our platform is that most of our investors are big owners and operators in real estate. We're the technologists. We go out there, we try to find the latest and greatest innovations, technologies, invest in them, and then we partner them with our big corporate partners. What I wanted to talk a little about today is a little bit of our view of the European real estate market. I'm not going to give you too many stats. I know that Julia and people before me gave their view, but kind of how we view it and how we see it in its current context. We think of the European market in really kind of three segments. I would say PropTech 1.0, PropTech 2.0, and then PropTech 3.0. 1.0 we really see as kind of the basic early innings of PropTech. These are things like residential platforms. So you may think about things like listings online or online brokers and agents, and then some of the early fintech within PropTech. So these are things like mortgage brokers, property financing platforms. That's kind of PropTech 1.0, really the blocking and tackling of technology and helping mostly consumer-oriented real estate actors, but that's an important part of it. In the 2.0, you start getting more into the commercial sector. You think about things like property management software, really smart operations, right? So operational efficiencies, digital processes, facilities management services. We're also talking about things like smart buildings. That can be anything from digital twins to tenant engagement applications. So really just apps for buildings. And then also space as a service models. Now, This is more tech-enabled platforms. So if you think of co-working or co-living, there's not a ton of technology. It's just that they're utilizing technology and innovation to provide a newer service model in this case. Then you have what we call Proptech 3.0, which is really next generation frontier tech. That's where we start thinking about things like artificial intelligence in processes such as underwriting buildings or underwriting investments. We also think about advanced robotics. So we personally invested in a company called Built Robotics, which is an autonomous excavator. So think of it as like a Roomba that digs holes. That's basically what it does, but it does it totally autonomously, which is really exciting. And then you have some blockchain and tokenization. So if you think about, that's kind of the framework we think about when we think about European technology, and most technologies will fit into these, one of these three buckets. We also think it's important when you think about European technology, and I'm including the UK in the European bucket, as really two different types of business models. One is what we consider more of a localized business model. This is where you will find that companies, even at the B and C stage, are still primarily in one country in Europe. And then you have ones where they set out from the beginning to be a pan-European business model. So once they get to even Series A or Series B, they're in multiple jurisdictions. We have found, because of sometimes very obvious rules, but then sometimes non-obvious rules, that these particular areas tend to fit in these two buckets. Online brokers probably makes the most sense just from a superficial standpoint. As you all know, the rules for buying and selling a home in Germany are quite a bit different than France or Italy, and certainly from the UK. And so you'll find that those countries tend to, or those companies in those areas tend to be very focused on a particular geography. But then you think about something like construction software, particularly software that's helping things like workflow management or project management. That tends to have a kind of universal application to it, that building, the process of building a building and working with tools on site in Paris is very similar to the process in Berlin, for instance. Obviously, the rules are different and the approvals are different, but workers working together on a project management in those two cities, it's identical. And so you'll find that those types of prop techs tend to be more distributed across a platform. And again, this may change, but this is just kind of how we've seen it. And we really try to figure out at the beginning, when we're looking at a company or investing it, which bucket is it going to fit in, because it has very, very large implications for not only its funding history and its plan, but also just, how is it going to execute on its overall business plan. I now want to dive into one particular area that I think is very exciting for people in the audience, and very exciting for PropTech in general in Europe, which is the digital brokerage and iBuyers. Now, it traditionally is seen as more of really a kind of consumer play, but I'll explain to you why in Europe we're seeing this ecosystem become much more institutional and much more of a commercial real estate play, with the, I would say, massive amount of attention residential real estate investment is getting in Europe. So if you look at the residential brokerage market or model today, you have two different buckets companies in this area fit into: the traditional and then also the new models. Traditional includes your traditional estate agents or your traditional brokerages. You can find them everywhere. They're on every street corner in major cities, on every street corner in Berlin. That model. Then you have what we call tech-enabled brokerages. And these are brokerages that are traditional brokerages that are using new tools to make their agents more efficient, right? So they're adopting these technology solutions to make the existing network and the existing model work better and more efficiently. Then in the new models, you really have three different types. Online brokerages, which you probably know, are very familiar with. These are ones that really have no kind of physical footprint, but are really utilizing the traditional brokerage model completely online. Some of them are using agents, some are agent enabled, but that's one of the models that are out there. The other is the direct purchase or for sale by owner. So this is more of a listing site that facilitates a owner to sell it, to sell their own property, or for people to purchase properties. And then you have a third category, which is a category that's very exciting, and that we looked at and backed a company in the U.S. that did this, and it's a development that's happening more and more in Europe, which is iBuying or instant buyer, and really these models are really AVM powered, meaning that they use automated valuation models to come up with the listings. And this is an area that I'm going to dig into a little bit to give you some of our views on this. Now, what is an iBuyer? So I may explain to you kind of this concept, and what it is essentially that, let's say you have a home in, I don't know, Hamburg. You go online, you list your property online, and then automatically within 5 minutes, once you put your address in, you will get a quote from this iBuyer. And that quote generally is market price minus a commission. If you hit the sell button, within 2 weeks, someone will come to your home, or there's some kind of process by which there's a inspection of your home. And once that home is inspected, then it's sold, and they'll work with you then to move you out of your home and go to your new home, but effectively it's sold. And so in a sense, it's a way to sell, it's a liquidity marketplace for people to sell their homes almost instantaneously. What happens on the back end once you sell their home is that this iBuyer will purchase that home from you. They will do some refurbishment if that's their model, or they'll just do a light paint job and get it ready for sale, and then in turn they'll sell it. So the way to think about these models is that they're really a liquidity marketplace for home buyers and sellers. In a sense, it's a clearinghouse for homes, and it really only works in the middle segment of home sales. It's not really great for really expensive homes, and it's not great for homes that need a tremendous amount of work or are at the very low end of the sales price. It's really in the high volume transactions within residential that these are important. You may ask yourself, well, how does a venture capital model work in this case? Because buying a home and then selling it, that's not a really high return on equity. And obviously, venture capital dollars are extremely expensive dollars. The IRRs that we generally have to produce are 50% plus. So how does that work? And the way it works is that these platforms will take those equity that they have, and they'll go to banks or they'll go to financing partners, and they will get very high loan to cost or LTC loans that enables them to purchase the home and then sell it. And therefore, they're able to make that work based on a lower or smaller capital base to facilitate that. The ones that are doing it correctly, or the ones that, the business model, that's purported, is really to replace a broker. And in these middle market transactions, or the high volume transactions, the broker, quite frankly, isn't adding that much value. And so the idea really is to replace that broker with these iBuying models. Now, there's also an asset light model developing, which is, think of it as you have the iBuyer, which is asset heavy, but then you increasingly have these asset light models. And what they're doing is they're really playing the role of the iBuyer. They're doing all the work of an iBuyer, but that equity capital is coming from a separate source, and they're just collecting a fee on it. So think of them as kind of an agent iBuyer. They're doing all the work of an iBuyer. When you go in and you put in your price, they're doing the AVM modeling, they're coming up with the price, and they're facilitating that purchase and sale, but they're not taking the equity risk. And that is more of the asset light model, where they're actually not holding the asset necessarily. Either they're getting sponsored by a source of equity, and or they're just facilitating as an agent between, a transaction between the buyer and the seller. The reason this is important is that when you look at iBuying, you may just say, oh, this is a consumer play, right? It's about matching a buyer and a seller. In some cases, there being a 3-month difference. The consumer gets the seller gets a better experience because of instant liquidity and certainty of sale. And then obviously the consumer can get a better experience because not only can you make it a better experience for them to purchase and sell, but potentially they could, have lower costs. But what's interesting in Europe that we're noticing is that the new development, not new, but recent development of a massive push of institutional capital into the residential real estate market, where large institutions are increasingly wanting bigger and bigger pools of residential assets. But the way they get them by buying whole buildings or buying what we have now termed build to rent buildings that are future developed is a long process and is slow. Sometimes it can take 5 or 6 years to build these buildings. So what's happening now is that we're seeing this emergence of a number of Proptechs that are out there that are either iBuyers and the buyer, they're working with large institutions to get them the stock that they need or get them the assets that they need so that they can aggregate these assets, or they're working with them as more of an asset light model where that equity sponsor will basically tell them, look, this is the type of asset we need. Can you go buy it for us? Can you go target these? And so we really think that, and the reason I wanted to highlight this to the audience is that this is an emerging development within Europe where these models are actually facilitating a new asset class, which we can, we consider a new asset class, which is really single unit rental, much like the single family rental or SFR that occurred in the US. What you're seeing is this development of this, in a sense, new asset class here in Europe, single unit rental, and it's being facilitated by either the iBuyers and or these asset light iBuyers that are out there that are really the future operators. So, a few key takeaways here. I think one is that you're certainly seeing the normalization of iBuyers. These markets are growing. They're getting bigger and bigger market share in certain countries. We're seeing a full ecosystem participating, not only the agents, not only are you seeing home builders, so builders that are traditionally building homes and then selling them or participating in these markets, but now you're seeing huge institutional investors come in and start to participate again with the idea of holding these assets as residential investors. And we're seeing this as kind of a replication of what we saw in the US. We backed a company called Open Door, which is now a public company, which was the first company to really, in a sense, invent this model, iBuying. We also backed a company in Brazil called Loft, which does the same thing. And there's a number of companies in Europe that are kind of copying this model and doing this. And we're seeing kind of a 2 to 3 year delay from the US here to Europe on this particular model, which is very exciting. So anyway, that's the presentation. I wanted to give you an overview of how we thought of the European market, and then a bit of a deep dive on residential and iBuying, and hope you enjoyed it and got some value out of it.
Definitely. Thank you so much. We will now get Julia on the line together with Matthias because they have quite a couple of questions for you prepared. Matthias.
Yeah, hi, Roloff. Very interesting presentation, and thank you for your time. I was wondering, in terms of the pandemic, where do you see things accelerating most? I mean, you have, clearly outlined the iBuyer concept, but where do you think will Proptech accelerate most now, and where are solutions most needed with the changes in digitalization and also ESG?
Sure. So there's a lot accelerating, right? I think the pandemic for a lot of Proptech was really more of an acceleration of trends we were seeing beforehand. Let me pick a few. I think one you're certainly going to see is a acceleration of adoption and innovation in repurposing of retail. I think most of us predict, and I think a lot of people realize, that you're going to have huge swaths of retail real estate that is completely empty. And those owners are going to have to figure out new purposes for that. That can be new concepts like ghost kitchens. It can be new uses like micro logistics, infill urban logistics. Some of it may be able to be purposes to, new purposes to, residential. I think that'll be part of it. Secondly, the office owners, obviously, none of us really know what's going to happen in office and the uptake, but I do think that you have to think that there's going to be a bit of a diminishment of demand for office, even from a macro perspective. And with that said, I think that it's going to really be about the engagement you have with the tenants that are left, right? And that you're seeing the digitalization of things like tenant engagement apps, which you've seen huge adoption being taken over recently. And I think if you're a Class A or a building owner that has Class A assets or really strong assets, you almost have to be looking at this technology. So I think that's a second one that's part of it. And then I think a third is certainly this residential move. I mean, I think the office sector went from being a very safe place for institutional investors to keep their capital to being a question mark. And if you talk to big institutional investors that are allocating capital, they will say they see residential as that next safe spot, including logistics. But the problem is there's only so much logistics out there, and land prices are getting bid up, and these assets are getting bid up. So I think that what you're going to see is institutions really start pushing into residential as kind of the next safe real estate asset that they can do. And these technologies are facilitating that.
Thank you, Rolf, very much. And my next question to you is in regard to the Proptech fund for the Europe. Why did you choose to move to Europe first and not to Asia, which is a larger market? Can you just tell us a little bit about the reasoning and also your mandate?
Sure. So when we did the European fund, I think there were a few things. I think one is that the real estate markets within Europe are almost as institutional as the US, but in addition are a lot like the US. And we felt that the technology trends would be very similar to the US, just slightly delayed, and it has played out that way. The other thing about Europe is that it really is one VC ecosystem. So sure, you've got London, you've got France, you've got Germany, and even with Brexit, we're seeing it's really one EU ecosystem, which is really helpful when you're venture capital because you end up getting access to all of the countries in one swath. When you go to Asia, it really is micro ecosystems. There's China, and then there's kind of the rest of Southeast Asia, and then there's Japan, and then if you want to include Australia, there's Australia. It's really broken up in a few different ecosystems. And then I think also although it's increasingly getting very institutionalized in Asia, it is an emerging area. You don't have as many institutional assets initially, but obviously that's an area that we pay a lot of attention to. It's an area we have 4 or 5 really, really big LPs in, and it's something we'll do. But we were very excited about Europe and where it was. It had a very strong footprint in terms of the initial LP base we had in existing funds.
Thank you. What would you say is the major difference between the Proptech ecosystem in Europe and the US? You mentioned already a couple of times that we're about 2 to 3 years behind the US, but what else are indicators where you see a difference?
Sure. So I think one thing is that unlike the US, the residential market is not as institutional as the US. So what we would call the multifamily asset classes existed in the US for a long time. I know it's Germany, and Germany has, obviously two or three really large, what we consider multifamily players such as Vonovia, et cetera. But if you talk about in general listed REITs or listed companies or big residential real estate portfolios, it's fairly few and far between. So that is an emerging class. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is certainly you're going to see a much bigger push on sustainability in Europe than the US. That may be changing with the new administration and re-signing up to the Paris Accord. But I think that there's no doubt that if you picked an area of the world that is likely to make the most amount of progress on sustainability, it would have to be Europe. And so the technology does have an angle towards that. which in the US, although it does, it is not as pronounced, I think, as part of that. But beyond that, quite frankly, it's a lot similar to the US. And honestly, I don't know that it's that much different in Asia. I think the beauty of PropTech is that a lot of the problems people deal with in real estate, in building a building, managing a building, managing an office, are fairly universal. These are the same problems, and so the technology that can solve them can be universally applicable. It's just a question in the individual circumstances of whether that scales or not.
Thank you. And you already touched about one of my favorite topics, ESG or sustainability in real estate. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the endeavors that Fifth Wall is taking in the whole as a company?
Yeah, sure. So we're a corp, we're a B Corp, which is a particular certification in terms of having a mandate for ESG and sustainability as part of our mandate. We also have a social mandate as part of that. We've done a number of projects in the sustainability field. I'm not allowed to talk about other funds on a program like this, so I'll have to keep that to the side. But we care very much about it, and obviously we think at a high level that with the real estate market producing anywhere from 30 to 40% of the emissions globally, that obviously as participants in real estate and as real estate people that come from a tech background, that we have a responsibility to help this. And we think technology and innovation can be a huge driver behind that. I think a lot of people look at sustainability and look at the future and say, oh, it's about cutting back. It's about, not having as great an experience. We have to make decisions. And although you do have to make decisions, the beauty of technology is you can have more of the future without damaging the environment. That's the beauty of human innovation. And so that's why, we've supported a lot of efforts there.
Thank you. And could you elaborate a little bit more about your LPs? And for example, I'm very much interested in the family offices because I can see that more and more family offices are now interested in it. And how do you observe it? And what do you think? Do you really think this is a very strong future investor in the asset class of PropTech?
Family offices?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the family offices in Europe, I think, quite frankly, are a little late to the tech game right now. I think for a long time, European family offices didn't touch any technology funds, and now realizing that they may be a bit late. So you are seeing a huge amount of interest of them coming in. I think the question's going to be, if I think about family offices that are from traditional industries that now want to catch up, I think the question is it just too late at this point? Or how do you figure that out? How do you bridge that? So some of them are investing with the idea of making it part of a strategic mandate to change the future of their business. Some of them just see it as a diversifier or as a way to increase the wealth in that area, which is clearly an area that has lots of tailwinds. But that they've kind of said to themselves, look, our traditional industry isn't going to change, or it's too late. So I think that there's those two examples, but I would say that they have in general been a little late to the game, but I have been impressed with the amount of innovation and coming. And I will say that, the wave of European venture is clearly kind of gathering a lot of momentum. And if you look at US firms, more and more of them are doing more and more rounds in Europe. I'm getting calls every day from firms that I used to work with in the US that are setting up operations in Europe and want to work with us. So I think that the future of venture in Europe is very strong. And I do think that family offices have been part of that. So it's good to have them here, but inevitably they have been a little bit late to start, but it's good to have them now.
Thank you. And I'm curious also about a new trend that you can read all over in the newspapers. It's about the SPACs, the special purpose vehicles. And like you heard about Mataport, about Port, a platform connects homeowners with service providers, or about Let's, the smart lock maker. So what do you think about SPACs, and also what role does Fifth Wall plays in it?
So unfortunately, I can't talk about SPACs just because we have one. So our lawyers are always very big about us doing it. But I do think that, it's a trend you should watch. I'm sure everyone's very interested in what's happening. And I do think that, it's something to learn up about. And it certainly is providing a lot of liquidity for people out there. But that's about all I can say, unfortunately, as part of this. But I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing more stuff in Europe.
Sure. And one more of my favorite questions you probably already know. What do you think about diversity in real estate in tech? For example, when I did my research for the Columbia session for the MBA student, I found out that only 2% of VC money goes to female founders. So what do you think about this fact?
Yeah, so there's a really good Harvard Business Review study that was just put out on, male and female founders and funding and those types of things. I actually think the right question is not necessarily to look at the whole amount of funding that goes to females versus males, although that's an important thing. It's rather to look at how many females put in for funding, how many males put in for funding, and then was there a disparity, right? And that's what this study does. And it does prove that there is a disparity in funding. If you took two exact founders, you would be less likely to get funding than you were if you're a female than a male. And there are a lot of kind of biases that investors have that lead to this. That's what the theory of this particular article is. Again, I'm not an expert in the area. I'm a technology person, so I'm not a social psychologist. But I think one thing that I'm interested in looking at these studies is how to combat that, because at the end of the day, as a technologist and as an investor, it really should be all about the data. And what we're seeing from these studies is that it's not just about the data, that there are other things that are leading to you making a decision, and that can ultimately be a bad decision. It should be about the data. And so I think that these studies and more of these conversations are great things, not only because it will give appropriately founders who happen to be female the right amount of respect, and then also the right amount of funding so they can go and contribute to society in the way that they want to and build these great businesses. But it also will lead to better investment decisions. I think that that's ultimately what it's about. So I do think that what we need to do is, instead of there's a lot of talk about it, but I actually think what we need to do is think about the actions that we're doing and look at the science and combat that science. So for instance, there's some theories on this where it's a similar thing in resumes. So if a person has a name, my name's Roloff, so it's a very different type of name. Sometimes when you have a different type of name, it automatically puts you down for a resume review. When you're looking at resumes, if someone has a more quote unquote normal or traditional name, they're more likely to be picked than someone that has a strange name, like let's say Roloff. So one thing to think about there is, okay, if you do have that bias just in general, why don't you just take the name off the resume, right? Then you'll just look at resumes, do it basically purely on performance, and then you don't have any bias. So I think we should be constantly thinking about human bias in all forms, and obviously fighting for, everyone just wants an equal opportunity and equal respect. And I think we should be fighting for that in everything we do. So.
Thank you. And my two last questions. What are the three main trends that you would encourage everyone to watch? You mentioned already the iBuyer platform, and since you are born and raised in the US, you have, you have the mindset of being a couple of years above and beforehand, and now you're based in London in Europe. So what are the three main trends, like tenant engagement or other, that you touched on that you would watch for our audience?
Yeah. Well, I was born in South Africa, but I am an American at this point. But yeah, no, look, I think there's a few things. I think we've touched on a few of them. The only other one I would think about as the next big area that will come up at some point is just a lot of technology and underwriting. I think that people are going to be using a lot of software to make better investment decisions and to gather tons of data. So I think both in the better underwriting for the kind of the data analytics and just data analytics in general in the operations of businesses in real estate are going to be two very, very large areas as part of that. And then I have to think robotics in construction and building maintenance is something that's going to be very large, particularly as you have an aging population within Europe. So you have less people that are able to do these jobs. And then in addition, just the cost is getting quite high. And so I do think you're going to have a decent amount of robotic solutions that come out of that.
Super. And my last question, so if I'm in the audience and I am a large real estate corporate, or I'm a family office, and I haven't started yet in Proptech, and you already told me I'm kind of too late to the game, but now I'm listening to you and I'm here and I'm interested. Give me about 3 steps that you would encourage me to do.
Sure. And I'm assuming in this case that they're doing it for a strategic reason, not a purely investment reason. But let's say you're doing it for a strategic reason. I think the first thing you want to do is just get your inventory in-house in terms of where you are in your tech roadmap and what tech you have, and are you gathering data, are you not gathering data, figure that out. The second thing is it's all about strategy. So figure out, obviously, look at what your strategy is from a corporate level and how technology fits into that and how technology helps you achieve that. And then I think third, you have to start spending money. You have to spend money on technology. You have to spend money on tech people. You have to get them in-house. You have to partner with great groups out there. It does cost money. It's an R&D expense, and you need to start thinking about the technology spend as R&D, just like Google does. And what that means is setting targets and then looking at the ROI of that money that you spend to make sure that you're spending it wisely. So I think those are 3 things. If corporation A came to me, I would say those are the 3 things that are most important.
Thank you so much, Roelof. I'm very delighted that you were here with us today. All the best.
Thanks for having me.
Stay safe. And I'm giving the word back to Matthias, who's going to introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Roelof, also from us. Yeah, it was really exciting, and I think the audience has now really gotten from Julia and Roelof a really good overview of the Proptech market in Europe and also in Germany. So this is pretty exciting. Again, this is a topic that a lot of people haven't got it on the radar and probably think it's still way back, but clearly, as it has been shown by Julia and also Roelof, we are advancing pretty fast, also because and subject to the pandemic. Now we come to I would say a second part of this session, and I'm really excited about it because we are going to have 3 pitches from Proptech companies, from Snoopstar, from Mataport, and also from Measurable. So 2 augmented reality Proptechs and 1 ESG Proptech, and this is really exciting. And eventually, you audience will have the opportunity to vote on those 3 pitches. Yeah, and I'm really excited that we have gotten senior executive from all those 3 Proptechs here today. So we are going to start with Snoopstar. Let me welcome Bodo Schiefer, the CEO there, and Bodo, the stage is yours to provide your business plan and your pitch.
Yeah. CEO from Snoopstar, and my presentation is actually about augmented reality. And if you think, okay, augmented reality, what does it have to do with real estate? You will learn it in the next couple of slides. So the situation is that we see a significant impact regarding sales decision information behavior and how we perceive our brand, that this is turned into the digital arena. And the corona pandemic has reinforced this trend. And then we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean for brand communication? And also if print is the big loser of this era. And the response is quite simple, and it isn't, as long as we keep in mind that storytelling and interaction are key. And when I say augmented reality, just so that we have a common understanding, augmented reality refers to the visual expansion of the perception of reality. And with the help of a camera of a smartphone or a tablet, then the content can be recognized and is played out on the screen of the smartphone or the tablet. So therefore, the user sees further information on the surface or even videos on the mobile phone. And then the critical thing is that interactions are possible, and this can lead directly to conversion. So this is what this is all about. It's about driving the sales funnel and turning interest into customers. And when I say augmented reality, let's have a brief look on the market and have a look what the pandemic has done to it. And if we want to see a positive thing in this dreadful pandemic, then that it has changed our perception, not only of AR, but on the digitalization topic in total. And if we go on augmented reality, then we see that due to the pandemic, these are figures for Germany, I'm afraid. But I reckon that this is a similar case in other markets too. So 37% are saying that they are more inclined to use AR. And if you have then a deeper look at why is this the case, then it's quite simple, because you have a better visualization of the product, a larger product range, and the buying goes faster. So this is all about the customer experience, from which we know that it will become more important than the price itself. So this is a bit of the facts and figures, but how does it work now in real life? So this is an example from German Telecom, one of our clients, but the next few slides then will be again about real estate. But just to show you how this works, on the left-hand side, you see the front page of a flyer. We call it the target, and you see then mobile phones from behind, and then in the middle you see our layout, and in our layout we said, okay, we want to see the mobile phones from the front, and want to have buttons that lead you directly into the e-commerce. And without that, the normal customer journey is actually that if you see these phones on the front cover, then you take your mobile phone and you Google it. And if then into the Google ranking, Vodafone or 1&1 is higher ranked, then you click on this link. And at the end of the day, Vodafone is saying, okay, thanks Telecom that you have printed 10 million of these flyers, but I made the sale. And in order to avoid that, we place all these things then digitally on the front cover. So if you open the Snoopstar app and then place the camera on the left-hand side, then you see this.
Ladies and gentlemen, get ready, y'all. Get ready. Ready, set, jump to the rhythm as hard as you can.
So as you see, this is about direct interactivity. It's about direct link, in this case, into the e-commerce. So whatever the brand thinks is helpful, then for the customer to convert. So the brand curates all the information that the customer wants to have at that point in time. So now going back into the real estate market, I would like to show you 3 examples. And the first one is from Lennar, is their project Champions Gate. And if you then place the camera on this piece of information, then this is going to happen. So, and here again, the brand decides which kind of links, buttons needs to be included. What might help my customer to convert, to make the next step within the sales or purchase funnel. So this is the actual driver. Since we don't need any kind of marker or code, we can also work, let's say, with a passport. And this is an idea, again, from Lenar, where they want to sell their properties to customers in China. So only on the Chinese passport is this kind of experience, and then with an exclusive offer for people in the Chinese area. So and this is maybe the interesting bit that you can access directly into your phone and can call then the agent or someone who can help you further with any questions. But at the first hand, you select your customers who are really interested by delivering them all the information that might be helpful for making the next step.
As we're fans of competition, 2 minutes left.
So this is then just for big builders. If you then want to know, okay, but how does it work with real estate agents? Of course, I also have an example for this. So, Snoopstar offers users a new way to interact with the content, and this without having to leave the print medium. And as you have seen, it's about interaction, participation, and also engagement, and all information are curated by the brand and are accessible. So there's no diversion via Google. You don't need to Google anything, which I think is one of the main arguments for it. So you create a better customer experience and also increase the qualitative discussion. So and then at the end that this increases customer loyalty and sales figure. And also the information that you can build in, they are endless. So whatever you think might be helpful for your customers making the next step within the sales or purchase funnel, it can be included. So what does it mean for real estate at the end? Is your content is available and also changeable 24/7. Your house viewings can be experienced virtually. So there's no personal travel necessary, especially right at the beginning where you don't know how many people are really interested. So you can break it down to all the visits that will make the difference. So the price communication can be adapted to the market because Snoopstar detects from which country the mobile phone is and then can play out different prices. You can include contacts, credit checks, everything is just a button away. And it's also about efficiency and KPIs because with Snoopstar, you get a full reporting dashboard where you see how many people accessed which of the targets, and then also what was the interaction level, on which buttons did they click, and from which area did they come, so that you then can focus your other communication activities maybe on weaker areas or on stronger areas, whatever your strategy is. And this is my final slide, and we already do it for a couple of broad clients like Aldi, Douglas, Telekom, Deutsche Bank, GSK, and so on.
And here comes your first question.
Excellent, Bodo. I think this was truly insightful in terms of what is possible with augmented reality. But what's your vision going forward? I mean, this is already changing a lot. But what's your vision in terms of augmented reality? What can we see more? We all have seen the augmented reality glasses and so on, which haven't been really successful. But maybe you can just give us a little bit of your view in 5 years.
Yeah, so currently for accessing augmented reality experience, you more or less need an app. So even if you use Google Lens, you need an app for that. That's app is then called Google. So the smartphone brands are building augmented reality capacity into their cameras, and this will, I think, take another 1 or 2 years until this is fully ready to use also for other brands. But the next step is definitely augmented reality glasses, and there are a lot of experiments going on also with contact lenses. So this is definitely the next steps we are going to see, and so that you don't need any app for it, so that it's automatically driven once the camera detects there is augmented reality behind it, and then it will be played out automatically.
Thank you. The next question is from me, Bodo. As a German-funded startup, what are the opportunities and challenges you have seen in Europe's startup space?
In general, I think the main difference between Europe and the US is that we are more risk averse. So in the whole startup industry, so which means that the expectation is that the return investment is already in the first year, whereas in the US you have 4, 5, 6 years time. So this is what I experience is a lower speed in developing new things, and therefore the Americans are always then on the forefront. On the other hand, all the things that we create here in Europe are more robust, because we know that if you aren't successful within the first 1 or 2 years, then you wouldn't survive.
Super, thank you. And also in regard to ESG and sustainability, does Snoopstar plays a role in this?
Yeah, it definitely does, because the carbon footprint can be reduced, since printed paper can be updated regularly. So, for instance, if you print a piece and then after half a year you think, okay, it's actually outdated, then you just update the augmented reality experience, and there's no need to reprint anything just because anything is outdated, because everything which needs to be updated then lies within the augmented reality experience.
Thank you. And can you please explain in simple terms, like in 3 steps, like a use case of a customer, maybe Aldi or Lena, another one, just like the 3 different, like the different steps, the offering, like the user experience, the analytics, and so that would be great for the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to do that. So yeah, what we offer is that we talk with the client which is the best target to use, and what kind of information we shall play out within the experience. And then the client can decide in which deep dive they want to go when it comes to the analytics. And we then create also Snoopstar Consumer Insight Compass for the client, where we show, okay, how do they need to change their printed material so that they are more successful within their communication. So we do this very successfully with Aldi, where we can show, okay, which kind of layout has which kind of impact on the accessibility and on the interactivity level for the customers.
Thank you very much for participating today. All the best.
Thanks for having me.
Now I give the word back to Matthias, who's going to introduce the speaker for our next pitch.
Excellent, Julia. Thank you very much. Yeah, so this was very insightful about Snoopstar. We are going to the next augmented reality company, Mataport. Let me welcome James Morris Manuel, the managing director for EMEA, and he will outline his business plan to us. So the stage is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for having me today. Just getting approval to move the slides.
We're almost there.
Here we go. Okay. Thanks very much for the introduction. So I'm James Morris Manuel. I'm the MD for EMEA for Mataport, and Mataport is the leading spatial data company. We're focusing on digitalizing and indexing the built world. And what does that mean? It means that there are approximately 20 billion spaces available in the world that could all be captured, and a digital twin could be created of all of those. So it's the equivalent of 4 billion buildings, but each building could be a number of spaces. On the ground, you might have retail, the first floor offices, and the top floor residential. So we estimate around 20 billion buildings in the world. And we essentially want to take what is a very traditional analog industry. We want to help take those assets and digitalize them and take them online. To give you a quick introduction to Mataport, I'll let this video play for a moment.
Anyone shop physical museums, schools, an immersive digital twin. Is Cortex, our powerful.
Fab. I think that's been completed now. I hope everyone could hear that okay if I jump to the next slide. So we actually have a case study that's already been taken with Colliers, and this was by Chris Irwin, who's one of the SVPs in the Chicago office, talking about retail and office leasing. Your cousins over the pond have found out it's increased by interest by having a Mataport model, and it's decreased the number of site visits by 50%. So quite a lot of time and cost saved there. And also it's a much faster process to contract for properties with a Mataport. Now there is a full case study which we will send around after the session today, which everyone can read and watch the video as well. I'm not going to play it today. So how does Mataport affect the property life cycle? So on the outside of this, you have the small circles for retail, real estate, travel, construction, industrial, corporate property, but also hospitality. So we trade in a lot of sectors. And traditionally, 50% of the customers have been in the residential real estate sector, but we're now moving into all of these other sectors, including architecture, engineering, construction, insurance, and a number of others. But in each one of these different industries or verticals, for example, if we take commercial property, there are many different ways the product can be used in the building life cycle. So for commercial property only, could it design that commercial property? How can Mataport be used during the building process of commercial property? When you are promoting that property to be sold or to be leased, how do you operate it from a facilities management point of view? And obviously, how do you insure and repair it? So the lovely thing about having the Mataport digital twin is it can be used really across each different sector within real estate, but all of the life cycle of that particular property itself. This is an example of where it's been used in office leasing. Oh. Would you like me to present? Ah, okay. Interesting. We move to the next slide. So this is another example of retail leasing. I don't think it's letting me click next slide.
Dear Colliers team, can you please support in regard of the slides for James?
Great, thank you. So here's an example on the right-hand side of a client walking through the property as if they were actually there. They can judge size, space, dimensions. They've got complete freedom to navigate, and you can see the blue circle on the wall. You just click, point, and move through. And the circles on the floor are different scan points. And this is a residential example. But where have we seen it for improve sales and leasing process? So up to 6 times higher engagement, 26% less time on the market for properties that have a Mataport. And also it increases inquiries by 95%. So one of the concerns that is had quite often is, does this reduce the number of inquiries because less people want to call because they've seen too much? And actually what we found is not only do more people get to see it, so it's a broader audience, but more people qualify themselves. So we see a 95% increase in propensity for people to call and ask for more information. It can be used to automate the data collection process as well. So what's great about the technology is it has the ability to give you the X, Y, Z coordinates of any property. So here you can see a property, and we can automatically give you the X, Y, Z coordinates. So you can use this for facilities management, but you can also use it to draw up any plans you need to potentially refurbish the space as well. This is a big one. So reducing operational costs by up to 60%. So, reducing the number of flights and site location visits. It enables people to collaborate in the pre-planning construction process. So more than one person can go into a space together and look at the media, discuss what needs to be renovated or refurbished or redesigned. It decreases the on-site surveying as well. So, photo documentation and measuring by 60%. People don't have to go back to remeasure every time. You can quickly go into the media and take a measurement yourself. And for those who are in the construction and design side of the business, reduce modeling time by 40% because you can take the model and put it straight into Revit to use in Autodesk as well. For the facilities management members who are on this call, it can also be used for including integrated content inside the media. So this is an example of a property here, and you can see the red arrows, or the red pipes with the arrows, shows the hot water and which direction the water is traveling in, as well as the yellow shows you it's starting to cool down and which direction the water travels through the pipes. And a lot of facilities management teams can integrate the Internet of Things inside the media, and they can take live data points. So from here we can see the water is moving in which direction, but also different dial readings here, 77, 45. It gives you pressure readings and anything else that you wish to integrate into the media. Another core benefit is object detection. So we have a big artificial intelligence library, and it's an AI engine called Cortex. And essentially it enables anyone to identify different objects within the media. So this is a residential property example, and you can see it's recognizing things like chairs and sofas and windows. But for commercial property, think about you hold a portfolio of 100 buildings. How do you know how many fire extinguishers are in that building, and where are all of the fire extinguishers located? In theory, you can put all of those 100 buildings into our artificial intelligence engine, and we can give you back a full map. This is how many fire extinguishers you have, and this is where they are located in the different buildings. So when you send the team in to update and service all the fire extinguishers, they can do so quickly. It can also be used for things as simple as how many square feet of new carpet do I need? How many square feet of walls are there when I repaint this office? And our AI is able to detect all of these things for you and give you much quicker, deeper insights when you're managing a portfolio. So what do you get from the platform? So obviously the 3D walkthrough, which is what Mataport's most famous for, 2D floor plans. You also get 2D high resolution images. You get the point cloud and the 3D mesh file as well. We've got virtual staging that we're launching soon. And all of this sits on top of the Mataport platform, which can be integrated through API and SDK. So it can really be integrated into the way you do business rather than, you know, this thing out on the side. It really can be baked into the way you work today. There's a number of capture options available. So the many different ways. The two which Colliers use with Mataport most heavily is the Pro 2 camera. So a number of the teams at Colliers buy the Pro 2 camera and they go and capture the properties themselves. They turn up, the camera takes 18 seconds to do one spin, and they systematically move through the property until it's all captured. They upload to the cloud and it comes back down ready to go online within a few hours. Alternatively, the other way is Capture Services. Now, Capture Services is a turnkey service for any of the departments who don't want to own hardware. So, you know, you get the power of the Mataport platform, but with no hardware costs and also no operational overhead. And what this enables you to do is send any location. You can just schedule it, and a trained photographer or technician will go to the property and capture it in 3D for you, and then upload it to your cloud ready to be used. The red dots here show the level of coverage that we have around the world. In Europe, we have 153 cities covered in the UK, Spain, France, Switzerland, and Germany. And when we say 153 cities covered, it's not only the city, but a 35-mile radius around that city as well. So we have a camera ready to take photos and Mataport digital twins of any property in 153 cities. All right, that's it from me. Thank you very much. If there's any questions. James,
perfect. Really in time. Yeah, I think that this has been quite an interesting piece, and I think for the audience in terms of how you transfer physical space into digital space, and also in terms of your already existing value add items. What's your vision in terms of what additional value add you want to provide users going forward, and in terms of as soon as technology is ready? Have you got a additional vision in terms of the value add services that Mataport can provide in future?
Absolutely. So going forward for the rest of this year, there are a number of things that we're focusing on. So developing new products for our customers is always top of the agenda. So not only is it the digital twin that I mentioned, but it's the ability to add richer content. So virtual staging is something that's going to be coming out soon, but also the ability to have new capture devices. So one of the launches that we did last year was the ability to use an iPhone to capture any property. We've just done an updated integration with the LiDAR that's on the iPhone as well. So you can use the iPhone with LiDAR to capture any property. So if anybody wants to just capture a small property quickly, they can do so straight from a phone. We're also going to continue our investment in our artificial intelligence engine called Cortex. I spoke about that a little bit before, which gives us the ability to not only convert a 2D image into a 3-dimensional image, and that's only possible because we have 4.5 million properties on the platform, that we have that library of data. So the way to think about it is, if you put an office into the Mataport platform in 2D, our technology has seen so many offices that it knows this square item surrounded by circular items is a boardroom. And not only does it know it's a boardroom, but it also knows that this is a table, this is how large the table is. Oh, and by the way, these are chairs, and this is how many chairs are in the room. So we're really going to invest in our artificial intelligence engine called Cortex. And the last piece is a kind of geographic expansion, as well as going to become a more enterprise-ready company. So at the moment, we sell into over 150 countries. We are increasing the number of countries that we can sell into, but also working with much, much larger businesses in those countries as well.
Thank you, Matt. Mataport has raised 140 million in venture capital money since its founding in 2011, and has seen a dramatic rise in usage since the advent of COVID-19 pandemic. I think the firm reported a 500% increase in its subscriber base in 2020. This is really amazing. And what do you think is the reason that people choose Mataport, since this space is very crowded? There's so many different tools available in the VR, in 3D. What would you say is like the main advantage, the USP?
There's lots of USPs, but I think the largest the largest one is certainly our artificial intelligence Cortex. Having the ability to take any 2D image in the world and turn it into 3D is something that makes us extremely unique, and none of our competitors have that, and that's what's given us our kind of leadership advantage to date. And we're looking in 2021 to really just continue to extend that leadership advantage by implementing new products, but also by implementing the platform marketplace, where you'll be able to integrate Internet of Things, virtual staging, and a number of other functionality into the platform.
Thank you. And since you have customers or clients in 150 countries, what would you say is the main difference between in the usage of corporates located in Europe versus North America? Is there a difference, or is it pretty much the same?
So there is a bit of a difference. Some of the speakers before me mentioned that Europe is a few years behind the US, and we're definitely seeing that as a bit of a trend. In the last year, we have definitely noticed that companies operating in Europe, especially due to COVID pandemic, have been focusing in their core markets instead of taking such a large global view. They're focusing really in their core markets and where they have presence in Europe. And we've seen it in certain cities where those who have been more technically advanced have really, forced an agenda, realized that the landscape will not look the same in the future, and are now starting to implement much, much more aggressive technological strategies moving forward.
In regard to ESG and sustainability, what role does Mataport play in it? And do you think it's also the importance of this topic? Is it different how corporates are seeing it in the US versus in Europe?
It's a great question. I mean, many governments have already set, a kind of a net zero emission target, however many years out it might be. So it's definitely growing awareness in the real estate sector. The way Mataport works, and I mentioned earlier in the slides, is you can reduce a number of operational inefficiencies, so reduced viewings. And if we think about how the model works, if somebody wants to go and view a property, an asset to buy, 3 people might drive there, and then they do a second viewing, and 3 people drive there again. So all of these trips are adding up and adding up and adding up and increasing the carbon footprint. And then the insurer wants to go and see it, and then the valuer wants to go and see it. And it's not a particularly efficient process. So by having one digital twin, we can cut down quite a lot of the carbon footprint that the property industry creates. And that's definitely getting a lot more attention globally, not just in Europe, globally, of how do companies work towards a net zero emission target.
Thank you very much, Matt. And I'm going to have a big eye on Mataport and what's coming up next in regard to the IPO via a SPAC. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to hand over again to Matthias Leube to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Very insightful. Yeah, so our last panelist is in the area of ESG. We've learned a lot today about sustainability, and I think clearly it's important to understand what one's footprint is, and maybe out of that also understand what the potential opportunities are. I'm really happy to provide the floor for Matt Ellis, the CEO of Measurable, and we are welcoming you to make your business plan pitch. Thank you.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, everybody, and especially nice to see you, Julia. I am so happy you've bothered each panelist or each presenter here with a question on ESG and made my life a lot easier, because I think it is the topic that we should talk a lot about and will be talking a lot about for the next indefinite future of our business in real estate. I'll let you read the screen here yourself, but I'd like to start with a personal story. I worked for over 5 years at the world's second best real estate services company. And I was the director of sustainability solutions there at CBRE. And that experience led me to more or less 2 insights. One, there was a profound transformation underway in the economy globally, but that this transformation of sustainability or ESG or green would disproportionately affect the real estate asset class, because it is the world's largest, and as you've heard from Moloff and others, among its most environmentally and socially impactful. So clearly, there was an opportunity as a services company here. The second insight was that we could not measure it. And we cannot manage what we do not measure, as you all know. And so it was an imperative at CBRE, and then ultimately for our business, Measurable, which is the product of my experience, that we start with first things first. That we start with the measurement of non-financial impacts, of carbon, of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And until we had those measures, until we had dashboards and we had analytics and we had transactable data, we would not be in a position to do anything coherent about our buildings or our portfolios. So I wanted to share that story with you and now describe our business and I think some of the important topics that we work on. If you're not familiar with Measurable, we are the world's most widely adopted ESG software for commercial real estate. We're now, I'm amazed to say, 8 years old, incredibly, so I have a little more gray hair than when the business started. But our customers are not just institutional real estate owners all across Europe and all across North America and into Asia and into Australia. They're also corporate occupiers. So you'll see here some logos that you might recognize as diverse as Twitter or Pinterest or MasterCard and many others. So it's important to look at Measurable and understand that we're working all around the box or the asset, whether it be a data center owned by Amazon Web Services, or it be a corporate office occupied by Salesforce, or the Salesforce Tower built and owned by Boston Properties. These groups are all our customers, all interested in sustainability as it relates to the physical asset. We've got about 82 employees. We've raised around 30 million in venture capital over our life cycle, and we provide a software product exclusively. So it's important to know about Measurable. We're not a hardware company. We do not put devices in your buildings. This is not a smart building technology play. This is an attempt to provide the entire real estate industry a single platform to measure, manage, report, and ultimately act on E, S, and G. I want to share just a quick perspective on some of the drivers. I think we talk a lot about, say, the owner's imperative in accessing capital and how investors are more discriminating in handing that capital out. And if you cannot measure and share your sustainability performance, you're at risk of not receiving that money whatsoever. But don't forget that we've also got a whole rise in sustainable lending and finance, where you're getting different terms and interest rates if you can prove how green you are. Think of the rise in green bonds especially. 3% of the total in 2020 green bond issuance was from Measurable customers. 3% just from our customer base alone. Incredible to think. And what they're getting from that is oversubscribed bond issuances and lower interest rates and coupon payments. That's a fantastic way to leverage sustainability to advance your business interests. We also should point out regulation. I think it was just last week, Julia, that the sustainable finance regulation landed in Europe. It's going to insist that real estate owners, among other financial vehicles out there, measure and disclose metrics on sustainability that allow them to claim whether or not they're green. So that is going to help capital move to green assets. This is a very important development. The Americans here, I'm happy to say, are behind the Europeans, not ahead of the Europeans. We're behind, but the Biden administration is definitely changing that. This presentation is available to everybody here, so I'm not going to try to speak to everything. I'd like to move quickly to the main slide here, which is coming up. On this slide, when we think about sustainability and the transformation of the real estate asset class, think horizontally for a moment. Think about everything that's happening around environmental impacts at the asset level. And every building, every commercial building I've seen on the planet has two things in common at least. It doesn't move on us, and it's got utility meters attached to it. And we can start there and provide a common denominator for sustainability performance for virtually any commercial building on the planet. But that's all the way down at the asset level. And from that asset level and from those meters are tenants and spaces, common areas, parking lots, all of which have different energy profiles, carbon emissions, waste and effluents coming from them, different projects, retrofits, other activities that are happening. We need to be able to measure all of that. Then we need to be able to do that for an entire portfolio of real estate. And when you look at property technology generally, there are very few companies, I think ours is among maybe just a handful, that have achieved scale. Thousands upon thousands of assets, billions and billions of square feet, or in our case, over 900 million square meters of real estate sit in the system. This is a statement about the fact that sustainability is not an asset level only phenomena. It is a entity or portfolio wide issue. So when you want to stand up a new real estate impact investment fund as an asset manager, you're going to need to be able to do that by making claims all the way down about every asset in that fund. But investors are investing in the fund, not the individual assets. So you can see how you need to be able to move from the asset to the portfolio level. But it gets even better. You got to keep going. We need to take all this information and share it with LPs, with regulators, with ratings agencies. And these are the folks that are really mediating access to capital. So what I want to describe here is the statement that I hope we coined, and if we didn't, we'll claim we did, of meter to market. Measurable is the digital infrastructure for the real estate industry from meter all the way to market. It's not just about the asset, it's not just about the portfolio, and it's not just about ratings agencies or LPs. It's all of them. And this is the slide, Julia, please hurry me along if I'm spending too much time here, but I'm just going to highlight a few pieces that I think are the most critical to grasp about the ESG transformation. We have spent the last 10 and some would argue 20 or 30 years of our business talking about sustainability and through voluntary certifications at the asset level, voluntary benchmarks, self-reported data. It is absolutely a tipping point now where you have a regulatory-driven existence. So we're familiar with what's going on in the European Union, but look over in the United States and you have at the city and the state level now fines and penalties and legal encumbrances to assets and asset owners if they fail to hit certain carbon intensity levels in their buildings. For example, New York is very famous here for its recent legislation. So this is a regulated existence. This is not a voluntary existence or self-reported existence. I think this is ultimately good for real estate owners because one of the problems out there is there are too many groups making too many opinions that are too arbitrary and not driven off of data. And that's really hard for a real estate owner to get their arms around. If you turn to, say, MSCI or Sustainalytics or GRESB or CDP, you get one opinion of how green or not green a real estate owner is. But if you looked at the actual data underneath that real estate owner, you could form a really objective opinion. And we need to make that possible. I think that there's been, I'll point out on number 4 on the slide, a very good move to change the thinking from ESG and frankly just E as an operating matter, as an energy efficiency matter, and think about how we can change our cost of capital. So this sustainability is not little e, I like to say. It's not just about electrons. This is about the social impacts of our buildings, the health and well-being implications of our buildings and our portfolios. This is about our materials use. This is about our supply chain. And this is about all of that as it relates to getting money to put it into our buildings, to get it back out, to give it back to investors. And that whole relationship has changed. It's not just about energy efficiency and NOI. The last thing I can point out is number 6 in this slide. Our company sits at the intersection of 2 major trends. Roloff was talking a lot about the digitization of the real estate business, and that's absolutely true. But there's another profound change underway, which is transformation to ESG and sustainability. We sit at the intersection of these 2 events. And it's been an awful lot of fun to do, but I can say with no uncertainty that ESG data is an asset. It is a competitive advantage to our customers. When Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of England, goes to Brookfield, he's working on building real estate impact funds and other impact investment vehicles. When our customers in Europe are managing sustainability, it's not just to comply with the law, it's to create new financial products. So they're thinking about sustainability data as an actual asset to create new products and new innovations in their business. I'm going to I wanted to share a short demo of our product, but I'm terrified that I'm going to mess it up and not actually get the
Time's running
screen.
out.
So I'm just going to go ahead and move on to what I think are the things to take away, and I'll close here, Julia. What have we seen serving 50,000 buildings around the world at this point? The change is profound from thinking about ESG as an energy matter and utility bills and things of that nature to thinking about ESG holistically. Executive compensation around climate change and diversity, equity, inclusion, governance, documentation, policies, procedures, physical climate risk exposure, floods, hurricanes, wildfires, green certifications, all of these things. This is ESG. It is not about electrons. And so if you take an electron or an energy perspective to this issue, you're leaving too much untouched in your business. A lot of ESG, and I did this in my old role, is consulting oriented. So when you go out into the world and you think about ESG and how to address it in your business, the first thing that people usually do is they get consulted in an Excel file. That does not scale, and also it is a black box. What we have seen our customers do who used to use consultants, or still do but have implemented our system, is that they're trying to get control back over their data.
Thank you so much, Matt. We've already got questions for you. Can we dive right into it? Is that all right for you?
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Matthias.
So, thank you. Yeah, so Matt, thank you. I think this is a very good presentation and also provides us with a view of how we can get to grips with the ESG topic. Yeah. So I think maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about how you described the data as an asset class or an advantage for companies. I think that this idea is a sort of a very interesting idea in terms of how you can look at this when you have that, and if you haven't got it, yeah, what it takes in terms of your vision or your strategy as a company.
Well, let's just a couple examples here from our customers. I mentioned green bonds. Now think about what this is. It is tapping capital markets to get cash to put into green projects down at the asset level typically. And in order for that process to occur and for it to be repeated across our industry, we've got to have the evidence that there are the green returns from those projects, the carbon reduction or the social benefit was created. That has to be measured. And so if you don't have that information in your fingertips, you're not going to be able to reliably and repeatedly tap the capital markets in this advantageous way. There's not a coincidence that our customers are leaders in green bond issuance. It's because they have the data. But here's other examples. Think about pre-investment due diligence. If you're going to acquire an asset, you now need to understand its sustainability risks and opportunities. Is this an asset that's prone to physical climate hazards? That's absolutely in the umbrella of sustainability and ESG. You need to understand the regulatory exposure. Is there a law already on the books, or is there one coming up that may encumber your asset? So this is the ability to invest and understand your risks and your return potential using sustainability data. I just want to show those two examples.
Thank you. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced many to reconsider the link between environment, society, good governance, and profit. That has created the need for greater focus on ESG. Many also now see the disruption as an opportunity to rebuild greener economies. Tell us about the ESG movement and why it's particularly important to the real estate industry. And also, since I have been now a decade in Proptech, and I remember a couple of years ago, everyone just said, I do Proptech because it was like a marketing gig. And now I have the same feeling, like, is it the same with ESG? Everyone say, oh yeah, I'm an ESG. I might not even spell the 3 letters, but I'm all in.
Well, look, I said earlier in my comments that, I had this insight is not novel, I admit, but sitting at CBRE and working with our customers around the globe, you do have that recognition that this is an enormous asset class and it is so substantially impactful to the environment and our personal lives. If we go to home, that might be a multifamily asset. We go to work, it used to be at an office, but it could be a warehouse or other facility. We live in the built environment, right? And that built environment is so substantial in the way that it drives our economy and our personal experience. So the ESG transformation, no wonder it's going to be the real estate owner and their stakeholders that have to reckon with it. So I think that's sort of self-evident. But I wanted to also just elaborate on that piece about thinking about this as an opportunity. And I really feel like real estate owners have a reputation for environmental degradation that limits their business in some ways. And I think they can pivot on that big time. I think that they can create new business models that position this industry as a great leading industry on the sustainability transformation. And I think that it'll show up with major benefits in terms of talent attraction, retention, not just new business models around ESG, impact investment funds, and so on.
Well, Europe is leading the world in environmental sustainability policies and actions. What have you seen differently in Europe's move to ESG compared to North America?
It's just as you would expect. God bless Americans, but we just keep going at these issues. I think too free market, if you will, too bottom up. So you get a regulation in Austin, Texas, and you get a regulation in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and you get a regulation in New York, but our customers own assets in all of those markets. So from their perspective, they now have a huge menu of different regulations and different obligations and different expectations, which makes business harder. It doesn't make it easier. Europeans have instead been clear and consistent that they will arrive at a set of financial disclosures and metrics that the entire industry will work against. So investors understand it, operators and owners understand it. That is a way better approach, in my opinion, because it sets a level playing field. Real estate is good at working when it has a level and consistent playing field. So I think that's a major difference between the American approach, bottom up, versus the European approach, top down.
So Blackstone just appointed a new global head of sustainability. Do you see these positions more and more to come up around the globe?
It was on a trip to, it's actually Paris, but I had the second experience in I think it might have been your hometown in Hamburg, if you said you were from Hamburg.
Yes.
Where I encountered for the first time ever the title Director of Sustainability and Innovation. How fantastic is that? That the Europeans understand that this issue, as many of our speakers alluded to, is opportunistic and transformational. And so, yes, you're not just getting directors of sustainability. These are actually technology or business innovation leaders in their business. That's a very powerful position. I'll give one example of how substantial this role has changed. Boston Properties, Ben Myers, one of the leaders in sustainability in the US and certainly globally, leads the workforce or workplace reentry program for Boston Properties. So when an office owner thinks about bringing their tenants back to work, they turn to the director of sustainability to handle that for them.
Thank you very much. My last question: if someone from the audience is a large real estate corporate based in Europe and they really know they need to act, what are the first 3 steps that you recommend everyone to start with?
Measure.
And the person wants more. The person wants to do more than marketing. So,
look, I mean this with all sincerity. It's not an accident that we called our business measurable, right? I think that look at what's happened here. We have been measuring square footage, and Mataport just presented, and measuring, floor areas and the systems in buildings, and we've got face rates and lease concessions and all these economic terms that we're so used to in our business. We've been measuring sustainability.
Right.
HVAC, you have to start with the measurement.
Thank you very much, Matt. And now I'm going to hand over to Juliane Thank you, Matt, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Matt.
guys. It's been very inspiring. All of these pitches and the fantastic companies that we've seen and their visions have really inspired us. So we cannot resist to go in for a poll and let you all vote on which of these ideas you would like to implement in your company first. So the poll is right now online. You can see it on the stream and then in German, Umfragen. If you like to choose your opinion on right here, it's quite simple. Pick your favorite. Go ahead. Oh, the suspense. I'm so excited. I love competitions. So as the polls are coming in, don't mind me staring right next to the camera. I'm looking at my colleague to see how the results are coming in. Let me just quickly remind you, everyone, you can look on the right-hand side. Sie sehen das unter Stream. Umfragen können dann dort auswählen, welches dieser Tools für Sie von Relevanz ist. Also rechts auf Ihrem Bildschirm, Stream, Umfragen und dann Ihren Favorite Pitch auswählen. Wunderbar. Wir schließen
Juliane,
die Umfrage.
let me add one thing, because everyone who participated today is an absolutely winner. There are over 300 investors, and we picked 5 all to present. There are over 9,000 Proptech tools, and we picked those 3 presenters. So just being here, I think they're absolutely winners. Now I hand over.
Absolutely, I can only more than agree with you. And like I said, it's the tool that they want to implement first. So that doesn't mean they won't go for the next ones. Right, okay, here comes my colleague Natalie with the numbers. Thank you. And the very clear public's darling today is Mataport. Congratulations to James and to Colliers for using Mataport. We're very delighted to have you all here. You've got amazing concepts. So like Julia said, everyone's a winner. That's clear. Right, closing up. Congratulations, Mataport. Closing up, we will want to look at what we've heard and seen today, switching back to the roots ins Deutsche. Lieber Matthias, was für ein Tag. Es war klasse. Dein Fazit.
Erstmal nochmal herzlichen Dank an dich, Julia, für deinen Input und für den Austausch. Ja, also herzlichen Dank an Sie alle, an die Teilnehmer, dass Sie uns so lange gewogen geblieben sind. Das ist ja doch ganze 8 Stunden, die wir dabei waren, und wir haben natürlich verfolgt, wie stark jetzt natürlich auch Sie zugeschaut haben. Das finden wir ganz toll, und auch jetzt hier bei dem Poll am Ende des Tages noch zu der Uhrzeit mitgemacht haben. Also herzlichen Dank an meine Co-Moderatorinnen, ja, und natürlich an die Speaker insgesamt. Ich glaube, anhand der Teilnehmerzahlen sieht man, dass wir viele der wichtigen Themen sicherlich erfasst haben. Ein persönlicher Punkt für mich, warum wir diesen Tag so gestaltet haben, wie wir ihn gestaltet haben, ist, dass wir oder ich gerne die Aspekte ansprechen möchte, die für uns in Zukunft relevant sein werden. Und ich möchte den Dialog sehen, dass wir einen Austausch haben darüber, wie wir diese Transformation, in der wir uns derzeit befinden, auch am besten bewältigen können. Und ich denke, die Pandemie ist im Wesentlichen eigentlich nur in gewisser Weise ein Katalysator oder ein Beschleuniger am Ende des Tages für viele der Themen, die wir letztendlich haben. Ja, die Vermischung von Arbeitswelt und Privatwelt, die wir feststellen, aber was wir auch feststellen oder auch festgestellt haben heute, ist, die Bürowelt wird Teil unseres Lebens bleiben, aber eben wird es gegebenenfalls einen anderen Stellenwert haben müssen, um eben hier vom Wichtigkeitsgrad her auch weiter Bestand zu haben. Aber ich bin sicher, das wird sich so entwickeln, und das sieht auch jetzt so aus, dass es sich so entwickeln wird. Ich fand heute sehr, sehr wichtig, dass Professor Südekump uns gesagt hat, wie die potenzielle wirtschaftliche Entwicklung tatsächlich aussehen wird. Die wird zwar differenziert sein, das heißt, wir werden Branchen haben, die weniger, sage ich mal, schnell durch diese Krise kommen werden und auch Anfangsschwierigkeiten haben werden, aber en gros wird es so sein, dass wir wohl aus heutiger Sicht Ende 2022 dann doch durch die Pandemie durch sind. Ja. Wichtig dabei ist sicherlich, dass die Politik hier einiges mehr tut. Ich denke, was gut ist, ist, dass diese Pandemie viele der Verkrustungen letztendlich aufbricht, ja, die wir sowohl in der Politik und der Wirtschaft und so weiter haben und auf einmal Dinge wichtiger oder an Wichtigkeit gewonnen haben, wo sie auch letztendlich hingehören. Ja, dazu zählt sicherlich das Thema Nachhaltigkeit, aber eben auch das Thema Digitalisierung. Und beim Thema Digitalisierung haben wir gemerkt, hoffentlich haben Sie es auch gemerkt, dass hier schon sehr viel passiert, dass das uns sehr viel nützen wird, aber eben auch, dass sich sehr viel auch verändern wird, wenn diese Dinge auch eingeführt werden. Und auf der einen Seite sind natürlich solche Augmented Reality Themen, die wir heute gesehen haben, sicherlich nützlich, aber die werden ganz einfach auch einen Impact haben auf die Branche und wir werden andere Aspekte oder andere Bereiche sehen, die in ähnlicher Weise einen Impact haben auf die Branche. Ja. Zum Schluss, ich denke, für uns ist die Umwelt wichtiger geworden. Ich hoffe, ich habe Ihnen heute anhand der Emissionslücke erklären können, warum das Thema Nachhaltigkeit oder Impact Management für uns alle so eine wichtige Rolle einnehmen sollte. Wir haben heute viel gehört, auch unter anderem von Boris Palmer, dass man auch einfach was tun kann. Ja? Und wahrscheinlich es auch so kommen wird, dass irgendjemand hier Entscheidungen trifft über uns. Und ich bin immer aber ein Freund davon, selber mitzuwirken, die Entscheidungen voranzutreiben. Insofern der Aufruf an Sie, also hier an dieser Diskussion und an den Lösungen auf jeden Fall teilzuhaben. Das ist mein Resümee. Nochmal persönlicher Dank an Juliane, wie immer super. Das hat ganz toll geklappt. Sie alle haben noch einiges vor sich diese Woche und auch mit den weiteren Talks in den Assetklassen oder zu den Themen, aber dazu mehr von Juliane.
Danke dir, Matthias. Es war mir auch eine riesige Freude. Es hat tierisch viel Spaß gemacht. Wir hatten so tolle Gäste und auch vor allen Dingen Ihnen allen vielen Dank für Ihr reges Interesse und die Teilnahme. Ja, wir haben uns jetzt vorgenommen, wir legen erst so richtig los. Wir haben diese Woche noch einiges in petto. Wir starten morgen früh mit dem Digital Talk zur aktuellen Investmentlage, gefolgt von spannenden Diskussionsrunden in den Bereichen Finanzierung, Climate Impact, Hotel, Wohnen, Office, Logistik und Retail. Also Sie sehen, der Themenschwang kann überhaupt nicht abbrechen. Wir haben noch so viel vor. Im Austausch mit Ihnen wollen wir eben neue Konzepte und konkrete Visionen erarbeiten. Das ist das, was wir heute hier auch durchaus schon geschafft haben. Das freut uns natürlich ganz besonders. Und es zeigt das, was Matthias auch schon sagt, das, was vorher unüberbrückbar schien und Blockaden da waren, das rückt jetzt in greifbare Nähe. Und das macht in einer Zeit, in der man sich so gar nicht greifen und in der Nähe haben kann, sehr viel Mut und Freude. In diesem Sinne laden wir Sie auch von unserer Seite ein, herzlichst wieder in den Dialog zu treten mit uns. Wie gesagt, morgen 10 Uhr geht's los. Also wir ruhen uns bis dahin ein bisschen aus, Sie wahrscheinlich auch. Und wir freuen uns auf das Wiedersehen mit Ihnen. Alle Infos gibt es wie immer unter www.digitaler-frühling.de und die Anmeldung bleibt kostenfrei. Bleiben Sie gesund und guter Stimmung. Bis dahin.